going in a day, doing a bit of work and stuff like that. But
yeah,
I thought that was an interesting comment that you sent through the week.
yeah.
I think you should take 100% credit for it, because I can't imagine anyone being interested in anything I've got to say. So.
Yeah, yeah.
What did you think of it?
Yeah, I mean, I was pleased. We had a comment, but we've been doing this for so many years. We've had the odd comment before, but I thought that one somehow it rang deep, and I think some sort of, I don't know, subtle communication there where the person was genuine, and
Probably just shows how few people are awake.
yeah, yeah. But no, I was pleased, and as you saw, I responded to him as well.
Mm.
So
yeah, nice.
yeah.
And what have you been up to? Anything exciting at all? Or?
Yeah, I from our last chat a week ago, and what we chatted about, which I really enjoyed the topic, but it left me thinking afterwards for the next few days. Last week we, as you know, we spoke about the mind, the thoughts, the emotions and feelings, all not being who we are. Okay, not actually even a part of us. Okay, it's nothing to do with who we are. Okay, but that led me to thinking about, how do we communicate, either consciously or unconsciously, with our selves, our divine selves, our connection to the universe, okay, that is genuine. I kept in mind about the neuter stream and so on, and that's all with body and mind that we spoke about last week. I thought about the neuter stream, and I thought, that's fine. That's an action we can take, as be still and know that I'm God. Okay, but that's not what I was thinking about this week. I was thinking about what is the connection. Okay, and it was all very well us saying that all the thinking takes place in the, let's call it the spiritual realm, or the ultimate realm, and then it automatically manifests with us. We said all that last week, but what is the connection? We didn't say what is the connection. Okay, is there a connection? Is there a subconscious connection? It's not the subconscious, but is there? I can't think of another English word that describes just some sort of connection that you're not aware of. But we know also that we have a soul inside us. That at some point, maybe before or after we are born, enters the physical body, or is entrapped or is encased in the physical body. Is that the connection? If that's the connection, how do we communicate with that soul? I don't know. That's what I've been thinking about. Well, what's your response? What's your take on that?
Yeah, it's an interesting topic, because I guess in the last week or so, the context that I've been thinking about is, well, I've been doing some study around, the Passion of Christ, which is the the lead up to his crucifixion on the cross. But it also had me thinking about, to a lesser extent, around, you know, the attack on the Buddha, for example, you know, prior to enlightenment as well. So it seemed, at least in those two cases, and I have this suspicion that for other you know, spiritual icons in different religions and so on, the story has some similarity in one sense or another in terms of the final, I don't know whether you want to describe it as awakening or final realization or whatever it is, but it seemed to be quite a tumultuous process, well, certainly in the physical realm anyway, towards that. But it seemed to me, well, particularly in relation to the Passion of Christ, it seemed to me almost to be like a couple of dimensions running in parallel, in a very conscious sense for the being, in the sense that there clearly was a very close connection which manifested itself as a dialogue through the most horrific, you know, physical attack leading up to the crucifixion, and then there's obviously the you know, the physical domain as well that was running. So they're separate but not, you know, if that's like that spiritual paradox. So, and I wasn't thinking of it in the context of the communication link or the connection, as you referred to it as, but it did seem to me that, well, I think I have to sort of maybe qualify it with the senses that my reading and understanding of the scripture in relation to Christ encompasses much more than just an awakening or a realization, in the sense that it also seems to be a fulfillment of a prophecy, you know, so a realization of what had been prophesied in the past. So that sort of almost adds like a third dimension to it, I guess, as well. But it seemed pretty clear to me that through the sustaining of the dimensions other than the physical dimension clearly had a closer connection, if that's the right word, than the physical domain alone, because it seems to me, particularly with those advanced spiritual beings, is that they can just choose to leave the physical domain whenever they like. So in that sense, and it's a bit of an assumption on my part, but it seems to me that a lot of the dialogue is happening in another dimension or elsewhere rather than just in the physical. So when I sort of think about, you know, like the words that were used by that person who watched, you know, the previous video, you know, that awakening terminology, it seems to me that the awakening could in fact encompass, you know, simultaneous dimensions of awareness that maybe prior to the awakening is we might have glimpses of the spiritual dimension, but our overwhelming awareness is skewed towards the physical dimension. So maybe it's just a recalibration of the scope and span of awareness, perhaps, that is what provides that connection that you refer to. I mean, it's sort of the difficult words to encompass what I'm trying to illustrate there, but that it seems to me that it's about this multi-dimensional focus rather than the single-dimensional focus. I think, but I could be wrong. Usually am.
Could be. No. Yeah, I hear what you say, and it's good to use somebody like Buddha or Christ, and because it's written there and it's you can read up about it, and yeah, I'm not sure whether studying that gets you along the line. I'm not sure that knowledge is in this case perhaps a negative, because it,
absolutely, yeah. I mean, I don't want to interrupt you, but absolutely. I mean, if there's one thing that I've come to learn over the years is that we can study until the cows come home, but our own individual spiritual growth is really an experiential process. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
for sure.
So I like you used the word that we used last week as well, which is awareness, and but it's also it's is it the soul in us that is, let's say, the connection is, we know there is a soul in us and we know it lives forever, and we are the soul. The best that we can describe it right now, we are the soul, because that is divinity. So the physical body and the physical bubble that we're in disappear on our physical death, and the soul continues. So the soul is in another dimension, okay, and so somehow the soul is evolving, okay. So we are evolving, okay, because we are that soul, okay, and then just going to another dimension after death means nothing really, because you just carry on another, let's call it life, that soul carries on another life, perhaps takes on another identity or a form or an illusion, but carries on living. And if it's not going to reincarnate again, and then it's still going to carry on living, okay, but in, I guess, higher frequency dimensions, until finally you get to the ultimate frequency dimension, and that must be well past the 10th plane, I'm sure, maybe the 66th plane, and or the 67th plane, which is just where everything comes together, where all souls come together again. I'm not sure where it is, the 10th or the 60th plane, but where souls integrate. And we've been we've been experiencing that, let me just digress for a minute, which I know I'm famous for. If you've got these, let's say 8 million people around the planet, okay? And we interact with some of them and so on. And however we interact, every one of those 8 million are a reflection of us, okay? So if you say, I don't like that man, hello, you don't like yourself. It's a reflection of you. It's not somebody else. It's not somebody else out there. It's you that you're looking at. It's you that you're interacting with, okay? And so all 8 million are just 8 million reflections of you, trying to make you aware, okay? and through that awareness, you move on, and you don't actually, in this domain, and I'm talking now, I'm actually answering my own question that I started with this conversation with. I think there isn't a communication, okay? There isn't a communication, a conscious communication. There's only just an awareness, and it's not a feeling, because the feeling belongs in the other realm, okay, with the mind and the physical body, but the awareness.
Well, let me try and give you a practical example,
Yep.
that I sort of was mulling over through the week as well.
Mm.
Is that, with my mother's death, and that was a process that, of demise that, from week to week, she would noticeably deteriorate up until, even on the day of her death, her breathing was very laboured and through until, she took her last breath. But I was reflecting on the fact that, on the day that she died, that I spent, a number of hours with her. And like towards the end, I was getting quite impatient in the sense that, I was feeling distressed with what I perceived to be the suffering that she was encountering and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
And I think on one level, being there with her, in her final hours and minutes.
Even though she didn't recognize you, she had dementia. So you were
Yeah.
there, and you
Yeah.
said she was suffering because of dementia, or because she didn't recognize.
Oh, well, whatever the physical, limitation was, I'm not sure, but in terms of those final, hours and minutes and seconds, it occurred to me more than 12 months after her passing that notwithstanding the fact that I was there with her, upon reflection, I probably wasn't, because I was feeling distressed about my perception of her suffering, or going through the valley of death, or however you wanted to describe it. And that then also got me thinking about, well, if you think about it in a little more abstract sense, like through the scriptural teachings, like, so to cycle back to like the Passion of Christ, so that if I was to have a mindset where, I wanted to be there with Christ through his final hours, how incredibly tempting is to look around and see how Peter reacted and see how that one reacted and see how that one reacted, rather than just being there with the person and doing nothing else but be with them.
Yeah.
And so it kind of occurred to me that, when I, like more than 12 months on, like with Mum's passing, is whilst I was physically there, for a good chunk of that time, I probably wasn't there because I was busy, wishing that, my perception of her suffering would come to an end, rather than just being there. So I think I relate to you in the story, that I turned around and the photograph of Mum and Dad on the wall and says, oh, come on, you've got to put an end to this, you've got to stop this, come and take her. And if she had any level of awareness or consciousness of me, that might have been quite distressing for her, actually. I'm laughing, but I'm not.
I know, I understand. Yeah.
So in the last week, like you talk about connection, and I think that's a really important thing to explore and ponder. And I wasn't thinking of it in terms of connection, but I was sort of thinking of it in terms of just being at one with, and lamenting that perhaps I wasn't doing what I thought I was doing, perhaps.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
then it's an interesting thing. And as I said, for me to try and take it out of the abstract and bring it to my direct experience, that's probably the best analogy that I can think of to try and say, well, what does it actually mean to try and be awake and aware without the self being an obstacle in achieving that awareness.
Yeah. Or what was that reflection of you saying? You know, while you were talking, I've never ever spoken about this to anybody, and that is, you know, my mother died about 15 years ago, maybe, and she had she was at the end living with me, okay, um, and and you know, we used to get a helper in, and then the helper started stealing her jewelry, and her jewelry just, and we got to a point where we said, you know, we can't just keep on getting helpers, but also she wasn't capable of looking after herself. She had to wear a nappy and so on. And so we put her into a home just about 5 minutes from my house, okay? And she was very, very upset, okay? And she was not cooperative with the nurses and the people looking after her. And then, of course, the emotion in me was traumatic. I mean, it really, really was traumatic. In hindsight now, and as I say, I haven't spoken to anybody about this, you know, not even my wife. And yeah, so I looked around for another home because, you know, she just wanted to get out, to just run away. And he said she was being treated so badly and so on in the home. So I found her another home. It was a Red Cross old age home, um, and that was better. Okay, it was further away from me, but anyway, she was there, and I went to see her every single day, and it affected me because she kept on going on, and I just got to a point where she was suffering so much, and now she wasn't whiplash. This was a genuine suffering, and that I decided I had to go away. Okay. So I asked my sister to come and stay in Port Elizabeth, which it was then, and just take over from me for a while. And I went up to Johannesburg and just stayed with a friend up in Johannesburg. And in hindsight, even talking now for the first time, I thought, what was I doing? I mean, I know I couldn't take it anymore, but does that give me the right to sort of abandon my mother? But into my sister's hands. They had a good relationship, not as good as my relationship right through my life, but they had a good relationship, and I stayed away. To this moment, I actually don't know how long I stayed away for, and a couple of months maybe, and then my sister phoned me and said, "No, I think you better come back quickly," which I did, and she had also lost her mind and so on, and I was there, and and yeah, she passed away. Now, in the light of the conversation we're having today, I look back and reflect on that and say, was she reflecting me?
That's a good point.
Yeah. And I don't know. Okay. I think we can have a discussion from what I said, and I guess the same goes with you. What was your mother reflecting? That you were creating an emotion, reaction.
I think the other sort of side of that coin too is like if, and I have no idea whether I'll have this level of awareness or not, but you know, when I'm in the final throes of falling off the perch, you know, I wonder whether I'll have the awareness or the connection to let go of, you know, the identity and, you know, just lean into divinity, or I'm not sure what you lean into, you know, whether it's, you know, you talk about the soul being, you know, God. So to let go of that sort of the physicality and that mental identity, you know, I wonder, you know, is that a really difficult thing to do for us in this dimension, you know?
And I think you're right. I think because what you're saying is that if that's a reflection of us, our mothers in that state was a reflection of us at that time. Okay, we were petrified of death, maybe.
You know, or didn't understand it, was confused, you know, wasn't certain, or not certain, wasn't understanding what was unfolding moment by moment before us, for ourselves or for the person that we were with, you know. So
yeah, but it's remember, it's a reflection of us. It's reflecting something with us. It's not what they're going through. It's got nothing to do with what they're going through. Okay. It's at this moment now, in the moment, that person, be it our mother, is a reflection of us. Okay. And what is it reflecting? You know, is it reflecting fear of death? Is it reflecting? What is it reflecting? Okay. I mean, I know subsequently. I mean, that was for me. It was 15 years ago. For you, it's only a year ago. Okay.
Well, maybe if you just take that moment by moment a bit further, you know, like when she did take her last breath, and then it was like, oh my goodness, you know, she's not breathing anymore, you know, and all of that, you know, please bring this to an end, you know, and when it did end, it was like, oh my goodness, what's just happened, you know. So it's a really confusing, you know, bit of a dilemma, that space, in terms of, I wonder what you're reflecting after the last breath has been taken or the last exhale has been had. You know, so.
Maybe you said it, confusion. Maybe it was confusion in you. She was reflecting confusion, and you hadn't got your head around possibly, you know, what death is, and I've, you know, I think after my mother's death, I don't know how many years, but you know, I'd really, I became aware of the spiritual reality, okay? And felt comfortable, absolutely comfortable with the fact of death and me dying, and somehow that has grown through to the, you know, the years now that I've spent in Australia, and more so in 2024, sort of just a peace, and actually enjoying being solitude, whereas before it was something I could never handle. I needed people around me all the time, and I tried to find people when I first arrived here, and I found people and so on. But slowly I got I don't know, weaned from that whole process, and I just feel very comfortable with the fact if I die tomorrow, okay, it's okay, you know, it really, really is okay.
Well, I wonder if that awareness or that awakening is, you know, going from a reflection out there, looking at a reflection in here, perhaps.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. Definitely. I think that's well put. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. And I, you know, when I listen, as we've had so much of death on Australian television, non-stop every single day, and then you listen to a church service and all the traditions that go with the death and so on, and then you hear the interview with the people left behind, and they've got all sorts of beliefs and theories, and that you know, I just nowadays I just smile, okay, and you know, in my mind I just say, you know, I am, I am, okay. Don't need to say anything more than that for myself. Okay, in response to whatever I hear on television or doing, and because
it's an interesting thing, because I guess for me, where like the sort of context that evolves for me is that in terms of the spiritual realm, and for me, you know, it's very much about, you know, my journey is around, you know, that of the Christian doctrine. For me, it sort of is transformed into this idea of friendship, and that might seem like a shallow word, but when you think about friendship in terms of the depth and dimensions of it, like, you know, like our friendship, for example, it spans, you know, some great depths and heights and widths and you know, dimensions to it, so that in a practical sense, like an experiential sense, and I think about when I'm making day-to-day decisions in response to whatever's showing up in the day, or what that person in that car over there is doing or not doing or whatever, I think about it in the context of a friendship, and that if I say or do certain things, like in a practical sense to you, you know, it has consequences. So that makes my decisions about what I say or do, you know, in the knowledge of the value and that I put on our friendship, to say, well, it's not just something I wouldn't do, you know, it's just something I wouldn't say, you know. And so the same sort of idea applies in terms of the spiritual relationship. You know, like people talk about devotion and worship and all of those sorts of things. But I think the more I think about it in the context of, you know, a truly solemn and deep and personal sort of friendship, it adds so much more texture and richness to it, and life to it, in the sense of guiding how I choose to live this life right now. You know, so those sorts of are the sort of contexts which sort of been dominating my thinking in recent times. But that doesn't say that it's different than just saying I am, because that's front and center to it as well. You know, so. Yeah. And there's everything in this space, as you and I well know. The paradoxes are just, you know, running up to your shoulders in paradoxes. But yeah, anyway. But I don't know. Did that make any sense? Probably not. But anyway.
Yeah, it does. It does. Yeah.
It's a really interesting topic when you have the courage, as I think you and I have tonight, is to bring it into the here and now personal experiential realm, rather than some of these sort of abstract debates about my God's better than your God, or my tradition's better than your tradition, or whatever. So,
Yeah.
Which in many respects is probably just, another barrier that we try and build as we try and build this sort of personal identity rather than a more holistic identity using the word reflection, so.
Yeah. I like that word, reflection. Because you can't, there's no exception, okay? All 8 million people, if you come into contact with them.
8 billion, yeah.
Yeah. What did I say?
8 million, yeah, I thought there's a few more.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Billion. Yeah, 8 billion. Yeah. Yeah. That to me, it somehow this week has made a lot of sense to me, seeing that we always you talk about the holistic and we're all one and so on, and we're one with the trees and the plants and all that. But when you're living in this let's call it a consumeristic society, as we used to do many years ago, and you see that person, you look at him and you see his mansion and his beautiful motor cars and property and so on, and you may have a feeling, okay, or you may have a reaction to that feeling, okay. But now when you're looking at it in the terms of a reflection, okay, what is reflection? Okay.
Yeah.
And then we come back to that lovely word, what? Okay.
Yeah, that's right. And I think too, by looking for the reflection, it also creates the separation with behaviors and actions and stuff like that. You can look at the essence of a person and see that what they do or what they own or how they conduct themselves is still not who they really are, and because for a while there I really struggled with the idea of like how can a loving God let this happen, well, it seems the more that I've pondered that question, it's one of the things that it seems that humans have is free volition, so if I choose to go and do something abhorrent or stupid or ridiculous or whatever, at no stage does a big stop sign come down or a hand grab me by the scruff of my neck, or as appealing that thought might be from time to time. But but it's a case of behaviours and actions aren't, and that's really shaped my thinking, because so I think like yourself, I can look at someone and what they do or what they say is of much less importance now than seeing the essence of who they are, which is that reflection. So.
Or the essence of who you are.
Or who I am, probably more to the point. Yeah, that's
Yes,
true.
it's a reflection of you.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It's not them. They don't exist. It's just a reflection of you.
Yeah, yeah. So true. Yeah, good point. Good catch.
Well, that bastard.
Good catch. So true.
Yeah, yeah. So that's what I've been thinking about this week. Is just that we've spoken about for the last 40 minutes, and it makes there's a calmness to me when I'm thinking about that, and clearly I think it's interesting observing what I said to you about my mother, okay, and shared that, and don't know what that means because it was me talking anyway, but it was perhaps reflecting how I felt at that time compared to how I feel now. I don't know.
And I think they're good questions to explore because, sometimes some of those questions, stay hidden or unresolved for a long time. It's not until you shine a bit of light on it and give it a bit of air that you can,
Yeah, a bit of air. I like that phrase. Yeah, I think that hits the nail on the head. Perhaps something I should have done a decade ago. Yeah.
Yeah, well, there's probably a long list of things that we all should have done.
I think there's lots of things that get trapped in our conscious and our subconscious.
For sure, absolutely, and I think there is a courage around, wanting to have that level of honesty with yourself to say, well, let me, like if it was like a like a failed relationship or something, like it's a really important question, I think, in one sense, to ask yourself, well, well, what did I see in that person? Like, why did I, marry them or have a relationship or whatever? And I think that just, as I said, just giving some space to those sort of questions releases, some of that trapped, energy. Yeah. But no, I think it's important, and then I think too, like even like we've shared tonight, about our respective experiences, like with the actual passing of, clearly an important person in our lives. It's probably quite even from a grieving perspective, to come to terms with some of those aspects of it, that and I think it also pushes away some of the clutter that is a barrier there to what truly is as well. So. And I think in one sense too, like as I'm sure you have, as I had, back in the self-help days of how to unscramble an egg, it would all be so theoretical, wouldn't it? So.
Yeah. I like that comment. Never heard it before.
Yeah, well, we've spent a lifetime scrambling.
Special.
We've spent a lifetime scrambling eggs, haven't we? And then trying to unscramble them. So.
Yeah, nice analogy.
Fascinating. Yeah. Maybe that's a good place to leave it tonight, eh?
I think so. I was absolutely. You took the words out of my mouth. I was going to say the same thing. I think it's a good place to to stop and see what the next week brings. But,
yeah, and I mean it's looking forward in anticipation, but not making it mean anything. Just a curiosity to see what shows up, I think.
yeah. Well, I think that's always worked for us. And so, yeah, thanks very much indeed.
Likewise, yeah, very valuable and much appreciated conversation tonight. So, yeah.
Absolutely, myself, I agree with you. So keep well there on the East Coast. And,
yeah, will do. You too.
Thanks.
Enjoy the coolness.
Yeah. Oh, I will. I love the coolness.
Okay. Take care.
Cheers. Bye.